Hi guys, welcome to another video we create with me inside of Style3D. So I'm starting out with a menswear look for my Riot Runway collection, and here you can see I'm just trying to adjust the appearance of my avatar. I'm using the default avatar inside of Style3D. I removed the hair because I wanted to add a balaclava, and I used like a default template for the pants, and also you would see later in the video for the top as well, because I did not see any point in starting from scratch. So I just use this as a base for my patterns. Here I'm trying to fit it on my avatar, and also taking into account the Martens boots he's wearing, so there is not a lot of collision. You would see I'm also adjusting the skin offset just so that the garment and the avatar mesh doesn't collide as much. I'm also increasing the hemline of the pants and adjusting the general fit of the pants in order to achieve the sketch you can see on my 3D window. So here I'm just basically still adjusting the fit, removing all the unnecessary parts I don't want on my garment. So I feel like getting the right base for your garment is very important before you add details. If your pockets or buttons or top stitch, getting the right base for your digital garment is like the most important thing in creating digital garments or even any garment. Just making sure like your base pattern block and the fit is correct right from the beginning, because once you've added all of those details at an early stage, it would be very difficult to go back and adjust the fit or the base of the garment. So I also changed fabric the fabric presets, just to be able to for the garment to simulate better. Here you can see I'm adjusting the same on the sides and also the pockets. I think at the end of the day I ended up removing that pocket detail. Here I used the slash and spread tool to create more fullness towards the hem of the pant. So as you can see, it's getting closer and closer to the sketch or the idea I had in my head for this particular look. And this look is called Riot. Here I'm also trying to make sure that my the waistband of my pants stay at a particular position throughout the whole creation process. So I'm using the attach to garment tool. So you use the circumference measure tool and use the attach tool to attach the seam of the garment or the pattern piece to your avatar so it never moves. So if you're trying to do a strap or a weird looking sleeve, you can literally attach some parts of the garment to the avatar just to help with simulation and making sure like the garment stays in the particular shape that you want it to stay. So I did take a lot of time to go through the base and just making sure everything is fine. Here as you can see, I'm trying to create the outer pockets you can see on my sketch. It's almost like a cargo pocket, but like on the outside of the pants. So I use the trace tool to trace out the shape of the pockets after drawing the shape with the internal line tool. So here I'm adjusting the type of seam. So it simulates properly. I went through like a lot of iterations with this pocket. I wanted it bigger, but I had already traced out the shape and it wasn't just coming out right and not simulating properly. So I did go back to remove the insert pocket or inseam pockets you can see that came with the base of the pants block I'm using. So I deactivated the new pockets I created and I went back in to the base of my pants to kind of remove the inseam or insert pockets I have. So here I'm just trying to figure out the what to cut out my pants and also the sewing line, just to make sure that I'm not taking off anything that doesn't need to be taken off. So I feel like creating digital garments is a trial and error process. Here you can see I cut out that piece that was originally on the main pant block and I reattached it to the pant block and deleted the former pocket pattern. So I'm still adjusting the basic shape because I was still trying to get that baggy loose fit look and deleting every unnecessary points or internal lines I had no need of. I reactivated my new pocket block and I deleted the pattern because it wasn't going to fit into like the new shape I had drawn with my internal line. Then I used my trace tool to sorry about that. I use my trace tool to trace out the new pattern shape. Here I'm adjusting the crotch. So yeah, I created a new pattern or pocket block and kind of simulated closer to what I wanted, and I was happy with the results. At the end of the day, just pulling, pushing, like dragging pattern pieces to where you want them to be would make life easier because it doesn't just fall into place just because you're simulating. Here you can see I'm adding a dot just because I felt like the fit was off and I needed to take away some of that fullness around the waistline. So a dot would help with fullness, eliminating fullness and even sometimes adding some fullness and just the general fit of a garment. So dots are very useful for achieving better fits and like shaping of a garment. So yeah, I'm adjusting my seams as well. I think I spent quite a long time just trying to make sure like it falls correctly, like it simulates correctly according to my sketch, because I did have a picture in my head of how I wanted the garment to look. So I took my time to make sure that the garment looked exactly like that or as close as possible to my sketch. Then I created like a layered piece on top just so I can be able to have that top stitch detail right on top, like the same detail on top. Here I decided to add a strap that wasn't in my original sketch. It was a design detail I kind of like came up with on a whim while creating in 3D. My sketch is basically like a guide to help me with the creation process, because sometimes you might have an idea but if you don't put it down either in a mood board or a sketch, you end up spending more time because you don't have like a specific goal you want to achieve. So the sketch was basically like a guide throughout the whole creation process. And as you have seen the final garment in the beginning of the video, you would see that there were a lot of changes that the garment went throughout the whole process. I added more details than are in the sketch, but the general look or the general shape of the garment was still there. So here again, I used the base template of a shirt that comes with Style3D, and I'm going to go through that whole process of changing or like removing details just so it can fit closer to what I want it to be, and also adjusting the fit of the garment as well, because it's just a base template, so I wanted it to be more customized to what I wanted it to look like. So I'm also adjusting and remove the buttons, the buttonhole, and because I'm in ZBrush, I'm going to be adding some spike details and some rivet details on my garments. So here I'm adjusting like the center front. It wasn't simulating how I wanted it to simulate. I think I ended up deleting one part of the front, and I just created a symmetrical pattern again just so I can have the shape closer to what I wanted it to look like. Yeah, there was some simulation issues here. I just had to re-simulate everything and just, yeah, make sure everything looks alright. So I'm cutting out some pattern pieces so it can fit the new adjusted shapes I have on my base, and also fit the look of the sketch. So I'm also making this a little bit longer, wider in width, and correcting the shape as well. I'm also dividing it so I can be able to put my what's it called, belt holder for the strap I have for the collar. So I had to take also into account like the final look, you know, how everything will work. As I was working, it was kind of almost like, not like I had an idea of everything I had to do, but it was mostly as the problem presented itself, I found a solution as I was working, right? So here I am trying to make this strap that will go through like the collar. So first thing I did was to trace it out from the collar itself so we don't have any fitting problems. I put the internal lines down for a button. No, it's not called a button. Belt loop. Yes. Then I sewed the strap to the collar, which I would delete some of the sewing lines later just so I know it fits properly. Here I'm trying to separate the collar pieces so I can just, at the end of the day, once I'm done with all the iterations, I can just create a symmetrical pattern. Here I'm also creating my belt loop. I'm making sure it simulates properly, reducing the particle distance to that effect, adding internal fold lines so we can have that fold belt loops usually have, just to simulate it as realistically as possible. So once I was done with all the collar pattern pieces, I just created a symmetrical pattern for the other side. Here was where I only put a single stitch for the strap, and I increased the length of the strap as well because it's obviously tied to a buckle, so I wanted an extra space for the buckle where I would insert that at the end of the day as a trim. Here I'm adding internal lines for the stitch for the top stitch details because I wanted to separate the pieces and not make them symmetrical anymore, because one side of the strap was just going to be plain and the other part was going to hold the buckle, so they could not be symmetrical patterns anymore, because one was going to be longer than the other and the other was going to have a strap holder to it. So yeah, I'm just trying to make sure like all the internal lines and folds were representative of, the angle I wanted it to fold on. You know how strap, the embossed nature when you have like a top stitch detail on leather. So I had the final fabric type I was going to use in mind when creating it. So I needed every detail to reflect that. So I was working, like the whole look was full on leather. So, and leather has all these details on it, and it just needed to be representative of that type of fabric. So this is the buckle holder I added to the second part of the strap and the collar. Here I'm just trying to simulate it properly and make sure it folds at the right angle. Then I added another internal line to make sure like it folds at the right angle and has that fold rendering. Here I brought in a balaclava I created in a separate file. I just wanted to add it to this before I went too far. So before I simulated it, I moved out the collar because it was supposed to be connected to the shirt itself on the inside while the collar was out. So that's why you see me push the collar up and deactivated the patterns and reduced the length of the balaclava and sewed it onto my shirt base so you can have like a solid base throughout the whole process. So once that was done, I put my collar back in place. I activated the pattern pieces and just make sure it was on the top layer so that it can simulate right on top of the balaclava. Here I'm also just adding top stitch internal line details just to reflect the type of collar I was trying to create. And I moved on to the sleeve. I wanted a long sleeve, so I adjusted the hemline of my original sleeve, simulated it, kind of changed the shape a bit before sewing it back up. Then I created a wristband for the sleeve. It had like I don't know why I came up with that shape on my sketch, but I just wanted it to look like that. So I went through the whole process of creating that specific cutout on my sleeve band. Here I was just trying to get like the general fullness of my sleeve, and here I separated the sleeve so I can be able to create that cutout on the inside of my sleeve. Yeah, just like a C shape. I used my smooth curve tool to make it a proper curve, and I just use the anchor points to adjust, and I just cut it out. We sewed everything, reduced the particle distance, adjusted my sewing line angle, then added my top stitch detail internal lines. Here I started to kind of create the base of my vest, like the vest on top with the pockets. So I wanted to create that from the front pattern piece. Here I'm extending the hemline, and I'm also adjusting the shoulders and the armhole because the arm or the shoulder length is much more shorter than my actual shirt. So I changed that up and I adjusted the shape, just creating a new arm side. Then I created a back piece from the front. I just duplicated that piece, mirror pasted, and sewed the two shoulder lines together. And I sewed the side seams together as well, just so I can play with the fit of the garments. I just needed it to be much more bigger than the shirt underneath. Here I was adjusting the neckline for the back, just making sure it's a little bit higher than the front. Then I was just creating the symmetrical patterns to sew up the whole pieces together. So center back to center back, center front to center front. I just deleted all the unnecessary points and merged the center front together, the center front pieces together. Adjusted the neckline as well, and just generally checked out the fit of the vest. So here I'm also trying to create the symmetrical pattern for the other sleeve and just trying to sew that up. I think I encountered some problems with the symmetry I created, so I just went through like a whole process of troubleshooting what the sewing errors I was getting was about. So this was me just, creating from scratch for the sleeves. I had to remove the symmetry, I think, then duplicated a new symmetrical pattern before I could get the right shapes. So here I added a hood for the vest. I added it to the vest, and it wasn't just coming along the way I wanted it to come along. I think I left it for a bit before I came back to that. Yeah, I played with the hood for a while because it just wasn't simulating, or it wasn't as structured as I wanted it to be, so I had to play with the general silhouettes, and I ended up deleting the first one I created in the first place. I'm still adjusting like the neckline, the general fit, just making sure everything is fine. I extended the length of my shirt so it's longer, and I had some simulation issues and I fixed that. I think like creating this whole garment took me about 3-4 hours. With like the whole recording, I just like sped up the whole process for you guys. I'm also adding my top stitch detail, adjusting the fold rendering so it folds correctly. I'm also adjusting the neckline of my vest again because for some reason I wasn't pleased. Then I was drawing the internal shape for the pockets I was gonna add. I decided to add just one cargo pocket just right in front. I didn't want two anymore because my sketch was two. I made the executive decision to just make it one. So I'm just trying to assemble my pockets and making sure like all my sewing lines are at the right angle so I can get the crisp sewing detail I needed. Then I added an internal line just to make sure I get that fold as well. Then I sewed the front panel of the pocket to the base of the vest as well. So I feel like with technical stuff like this, you need to add as many internal lines as possible in order to get like specific types of details you're looking for. Just like the small stitch line I added to the pocket so that the fold can be more emphasized. So you just have to pay attention to these little details, because at the end of the day they do make up the final look. So I'm also here trying to create the flap of the pocket. So I just duplicated the main pocket shape because it was literally the same size. Then I just, reduced the length of the hem. I did an internal line for the fold because you needed to fold over. It's not just going to be flat. Then this is me playing with the shape of the hemline. I don't think I like this one, so I kind of changed it a bit. I was just trying to pay closer attention to the general shape. And I think I went with this one, which I preferred than the more circular one. So this one is more angled. Added internal top stitch internal lines for details. Same thing on the pockets as well. So every time I do that, I always simulate to make sure that it's folding, or the fold rendering is happening at the right angles. So here I'm also adding like the loops I needed for the chain and the metal details, the buckles, the clasp I was gonna use, because I did use a D-ring. I used the regular metal clasp for just hooking up the chain detail I had on the vest. At this point, I had totally forgotten about the zipper details on the shirt. I think I did that later on towards the end of like the whole process. So I'm just trying to make sure I get the actual shape right and sewing it on the vest. So once I was happy with this shape, I duplicated it a couple of times to put it on like the other parts of the vest I wanted it on. So there were like a total of 4 loops, so 2 on the sides and 2 on the bottom. This is me doing the sides and also doing the bottom. Yeah, this was also me trying to create the curve of the vest, but I decided not to because it wasn't just looking right. It was just looking weird. I don't know. And I kind of liked the straight look, so I ended up just sticking with the straight look I had. Did a symmetrical pattern for the final loop, and we're done with the loops. Just checking all the sewing lines and making sure they're all turned so that they can lay flat, as opposed to them being at a custom angle, and also making sure all the sewing lines are the actual shape. Also here, I think I decided to add a detail at the back. I'm also adjusting the neckline because for some reason I wasn't just happy with the way the neckline of the vest looked. Yeah, this was gonna be the pattern piece I would use to attach the chains, because I decided to use top stitch as the chain detail, which really works out well as opposed to having like a proper 3D mesh as a chain. I just feel is more optimized that way. I think so. So I was just trying to make sure like everything was looking fine. I think I had a problem with the feet on the balaclava and the shirt, so I was trying to fix that. I think there was an issue with the sewing line. And here I was just taking into account like the general look and feel of the garments. I'm just turning around and just trying to see what needs to be done, adding the details where it needed to be added, especially like the top stitching details. It was very easy to forget to add all of those details, which were very important to the general look of my garments. Here, as you can see, I'm also adding like puckering details on it because it's leather and it would pucker. So I'm adding it to everywhere that was important to add, and also adjusting like the position of it as well. So I also made like the zipper detail for the shirt. I think I forgot to record that part, and this was me just doing like the final detailing of the shirt. I ended up creating a hood I liked at the end of the day, and I had added like the top stitch detail on as a chain, and also the D-ring details as well. Also added additional straps at the back, and I was just putting like the final top stitching detail, like actual top stitching, custom top stitching I created inside of the program. And yeah, that's basically it. Just watch me go through. Then I exported out my textures or my 3D mesh into Blender. I textured the final look inside of Substance Painter, and I added the spike details inside of ZBrush. So guys, that's it. That's how I created the Riot Rider from the Riot Runway collection. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave your comments if you have questions or if there's a particular thing you want me to share. I'll be happy to answer your questions. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.